The Galactic Federation had ruled the stars for millennia, its influence spreading across countless systems and species. It was not an empire of cruelty, or so they claimed, but one of order and progress. Those who resisted their embrace were considered anomalies to be corrected. To the Federation Council, Earth was merely the latest in a long line of defiant planets, resource-rich, strategically positioned, and woefully unprepared for what was coming. Admiral Vestra gazed at the tactical holodisplay aboard her command ship, the Relentless. A swirling orb of blue and green spun in the center of the projection, its modest satellite circling lazily. Earth. It was an unassuming world, vibrant but small, overshadowed by the might of the fleet she commanded. Her ship alone could obliterate entire continents, yet it was just one of over 1,000 vessels orbiting nearby. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Terran leadership," her communications officer reported. Vestra sighed and leaned back, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Put it through." The display shifted, revealing a human figure standing in an austere chamber. The man's expression was calm, his suit meticulously pressed, and his hands clasped in front of him as though this were a mere business negotiation. "This is the United Council of Earth speaking," the man began, his voice measured and deliberate. "Your presence in our orbit is neither welcomed nor permitted. Withdraw immediately, or you will face consequences." Vestra raised an eyebrow. "Consequences?" she repeated with a smirk, muting the feed briefly. "Do they not see the fleet? They're posturing. Bluffing, perhaps." She turned to her first officer. "The primitives don't seem to grasp their position." The human's voice continued. "We understand that our technological standing may appear insignificant compared to the Federation's. That perception is incorrect. This is your final warning. Leave now, and we will consider this incident resolved." "Such boldness from a backwater," Vestra muttered, reopening the channel. "Terran Council, this is Admiral Vestra of the Galactic Federation. Your resistance to compliance has been noted. I recommend you reconsider before forcing our hand." The human tilted his head slightly, as though genuinely curious. "Admiral, do you truly believe we are as defenseless as we appear? Consider the stakes carefully. Your actions today could set a precedent the galaxy will not soon forget." A flicker of annoyance passed through Vestra's sharp features. She gestured to her communications officer to cut the transmission. "Enough theatrics. Let them stew in their own hubris. Prepare the fleet to move into position." The room buzzed with activity as officers carried out her orders. Vestra turned back to the holodisplay, watching Earth spin on its axis. Something about their composure gnawed at her. Most civilizations begged. Many cried. A few fought valiantly but futilely. None had ever spoken with such unnerving conviction. "Admiral," the sensor chief called out, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures in their atmosphere. Nothing resembling conventional weaponry. Possibly a defensive shield under construction? Let them play with their toys," Vestra said dismissively. "It won't change the outcome." Yet the unease lingered. She had risen through the ranks not only through strategic acumen, but through her ability to read the tides of conflict. There was something unsettling about Earth. Not their defenses. There was no indication of a fleet capable of challenging even a fraction of her armada. But their demeanor. They weren't behaving like a species on the verge of annihilation. "Patch me through to the Council," Vestra ordered abruptly. Her advisors appeared on her private display moments later. The Cinder ambassador, whose people were famed for their telepathic prowess, was the first to speak. "Admiral Vestra, the Terrans are attempting to unnerve you. It is a psychological ploy. Their rhetoric is meaningless." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Perhaps. Yet their confidence feels unearned." "Destroy a continent," suggested another voice, blunt and cold. "Let them see the futility of resistance. They'll fall in line as all others have." But Vestra shook her head. "No. We proceed as planned. An overwhelming show of force, but no needless destruction. A broken people are harder to govern." The council members exchanged nods of approval before the call ended. Vestra sighed, her resolve firm. She had never doubted her ability to command, and she would not begin now. "Admiral, another transmission from Earth," the communications officer interrupted. Her patience was wearing thin, but she gestured for it to be put through. This time, the human spoke more gravely. "Admiral Vestra, this is Earth's final message. What happens next will not be undone. This is not a threat, it is a statement of fact. You have been warned." Before she could respond, the feed cut off. Vestra clenched her jaw, irritation and curiosity warring within her. She turned to her officers. "All ships prepare for the assault. Let's put an end to their posturing." As the fleet began its slow advance toward Earth, Vestra couldn't shake the feeling that she had just crossed an invisible line. Something irrevocable. But she buried the thought beneath layers of discipline. The Federation did not bow to threats from upstarts. And yet, far below on the surface of the vibrant planet, the humans watched and waited, unshaken, as the Galactic Armada loomed above them. Earth's council chamber was silent, save for the faint hum of machinery monitoring every detail of the situation above. The representatives, each carrying the weight of billions of lives, sat in calm deliberation. They had known this day would come. It wasn't arrogance that had led to humanity's defiance, nor was it desperation. It was preparation. "We've issued the warning," said Counselor Amina, her voice steady. "The question now is whether they truly understand the stakes." Counselor Ramirez leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "It doesn't matter. They've come this far, they won't turn back. They never do." In the center of the chamber, a vast holographic display projected the Galactic Federation's fleet. Thousands of ships, each one a marvel of alien engineering, formed an impenetrable wall of power. But it wasn't fear that filled the room, it was a grim determination. Dr. Elias Sorensen, the lead scientist behind humanity's most secretive project, broke the silence. "We all knew this moment was inevitable. They see us as just another species to subjugate, another planet to exploit. They have no concept of what they're facing." Amina glanced at him. "Do we fully understand it ourselves, Doctor? What we've created is not just a weapon. It's something else." Sorensen nodded, acknowledging the gravity of her words. Project Null isn't destruction in the conventional sense. It's removal, absolute and irrevocable. They won't leave wreckage or remnants behind. They'll simply cease to be." Ramirez exhaled sharply. "And you're confident it will work on this scale?" Sorensen's expression didn't waver. "The tests were conclusive. We can activate it at a planetary range. The fleet will be gone." The room fell into another heavy silence. Everyone present understood the ethical weight of their decision. This wasn't a war of conquest or rebellion, it was survival. But survival at such a cost was a burden none of them took lightly. "It's not just the fleet," Amina said softly. "It's what comes after. The galaxy will know what we've done. They'll fear us. Better feared than enslaved," Ramirez countered. "The Federation doesn't respect diplomacy. They respect power. If we don't act decisively, they'll be back, and next time, we won't have the element of surprise." Sorensen tapped a control on the table, bringing up additional data. Energy readings, spatial distortions, calculations that most in the room couldn't fully comprehend. "The device is ready. We're operating within safe parameters." Safe. The word felt hollow, even to Sorensen. Nothing about Project Null was truly safe. It was an existential gamble, a technology that defied understanding. By all accounts, the Federation should have been centuries ahead of humanity in scientific advancements. Yet, in their arrogance, they had overlooked the potential of quantum manipulation, dismissing Earth's innovations as insignificant. On the surface of the planet, hidden deep within an unassuming facility, the device awaited activation. It was a marvel of engineering, a lattice of crystalline structures and quantum nodes capable of altering the very fabric of reality. It wasn't designed to destroy in the traditional sense. It didn't rely on brute force or explosive power. Instead, it severed the connection between matter and its dimensional anchor, effectively erasing it from existence. The plan was simple in concept but monumental in execution. The Federation fleet, currently advancing into optimal range, would be the first, and if humanity had its way, the only target of the device. A technician's voice crackled over the chamber's intercom. The fleet is beginning their descent into low orbit. Energy levels remain within thresholds. We're tracking their movements. Amina turned to Ramirez. We should give them one last chance. Ramirez frowned but didn't argue. Fine. But if they don't stand down this time, we act. No hesitation. The transmission was sent, and moments later, the holographic display shifted to show the Federation's admiral. Vestra's face appeared, her expression sharp and unreadable. Behind her, the interior of her command ship gleamed with cold precision. This is becoming tiresome, Vestra said, her tone clipped. You've had ample opportunity to surrender. Do you truly believe you can threaten the Federation? The Council's spokesperson, a composed woman with piercing eyes, responded. We're not threatening. We're stating facts. Turn back now, Admiral, and your fleet will be spared. Vestra leaned forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. And if we don't? The spokesperson didn't flinch. Then you will no longer exist. For a moment, Vestra said nothing, studying the human representative. Then she leaned back, a faint smile on her lips. We'll see about that. The connection cut, and the chamber filled with a tense silence. She's calling our bluff, Ramirez said. Amina shook her head. She doesn't realize it isn't one. Sorensen stood, his hands clasped behind his back. They've made their decision. It's time to make ours. The council members exchanged somber glances. There was no debate, no dissent. They had prepared for this moment for decades, and now it had arrived. Proceed, Amina said quietly. Far below, the facility housing Project Null came to life. Technicians moved with practiced precision, initiating the sequence that would change the galaxy forever. Energy readings spiked as the device powered up, its hum growing louder and deeper, resonating through the Earth itself. Above, the Federation fleet continued its approach, oblivious to the invisible force gathering beneath them. Vestra, confident in her superiority, gave the order to commence bombardment. The first salvo of energy beams streaked toward the planet, only to dissipate into nothingness before reaching the atmosphere. On Earth, the hum of the device reached a crescendo. A blinding pulse of light, invisible to the human eye but resonant across dimensions, spread outward. In the vastness of space, the fleet began to shimmer, its ships flickering like dying stars. Humanity watched in silence as their aggressors vanished, one by one, leaving nothing behind. The fleet loomed above Earth, a sea of dark shapes blotting out the stars. Admiral Vestra stood on the bridge of the Relentless, the hum of power surging through the massive vessel. Her officers worked diligently at their stations, issuing commands to the rest of the fleet as the assault began. Primary batteries, fire on my mark, Vestra commanded, her voice sharp and unwavering. She watched as her orders rippled through the ranks, the tactical display lighting up with the signatures of hundreds of ships preparing to unleash their combined firepower. Below, Earth remained eerily silent. No counterattack. No desperate pleas. The lack of response irritated Vestra. Conquest was a familiar dance: resistance, defiance, and ultimately surrender. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She leaned closer to the tactical display, scrutinizing the surface of the planet for any sign of activity. There was none. Admiral, all batteries report ready, her weapons officer confirmed. Fire! The command unleashed a torrent of energy beams and projectile weaponry, each blast capable of leveling cities. The weapons tore through the void toward Earth, but as they neared the atmosphere, something unthinkable happened. The beams vanished, dissolving into faint ripples of light as though absorbed by an invisible barrier. The projectiles disintegrated mid-flight, leaving no trace behind. What in the name of... Vestra stopped herself, her voice tight with disbelief. What just happened? Her officers scrambled, analyzing the unexpected phenomena. Admiral, it's not a shield, one of them reported, his voice tinged with confusion. The energy signatures suggest nullification. The projectiles aren't being deflected, they're being erased. Erased? Vestra repeated, her tone icy. That's impossible. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. Another wave of firepower yielded the same result, nothing. Vestra clenched her fists, frustration mounting. This was no ordinary defense. The humans were using something far beyond Federation understanding. On Earth, the Council members watched the scene unfold on their own displays. The fleet's aggression was expected, their response meticulously calculated. The room remained quiet, save for the soft hum of Project Null reaching its final stages of activation. Sorensen monitored the energy levels, his hands hovering over the controls. They're still advancing, he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. They haven't realized what's about to happen. Perhaps they will, too late, Amina replied, her gaze fixed on the display. Initiate. Sorensen pressed the final sequence, his expression unreadable. The device emitted a deep, resonant pulse, imperceptible to the senses but rippling through space like a wave crashing against unseen shores. Its effects were immediate. Above Earth, the galactic fleet faltered. Ships began to flicker, their solid forms shimmering as though caught in a heat haze. Vestra's command ship trembled, her officers shouting as systems failed one by one. Admiral! One officer cried. We're losing everything. Systems are shutting down. No, they're disappearing. Vestra gripped the edge of her console, her mind racing. This wasn't an attack in any conventional sense. There were no explosions, no debris, no resistance. The fleet was vanishing. She glanced out the viewport, watching in horror as the ships nearest to hers dissolved into nothingness. One moment they were there, the next, they simply ceased to exist. Admiral, our dimensional anchors are destabilizing. Another officer reported, panic seeping into his voice. We're being unmade. Impossible, Vestra whispered, her disbelief giving way to fear. The Galactic Federation had conquered worlds, survived cataclysms, and triumphed over enemies far stronger than Earth. Yet here, in the orbit of this insignificant planet, their might was being undone without a single shot fired in retaliation. In the council chamber, Sorensen's voice broke the silence. The fleet is within range. Nullification is complete. Ramirez nodded, his jaw set. Confirm all ships have been neutralized. A technician responded immediately. Yes, sir. The fleet's presence has been erased. Amina closed her eyes for a brief moment, her expression one of both relief and solemnity. And so it ends. Above, the Relentless lingered longer than the others, its advanced systems delaying the inevitable. Vestra remained rooted in place, watching as the last remnants of her fleet vanished. She was alone now, her command ship surrounded by an empty void where thousands of vessels once stood. Admiral, we're next, her first officer stammered, his voice trembling. It's only a matter of seconds. Vestra's mind raced, grasping for any possible solution, but there was none. The Federation's vast arsenal, its centuries of technological superiority, had been rendered meaningless. And in those final moments, as the Relentless began to dissolve around her, she understood the true meaning of Earth's warning. They had never intended to fight the Federation. They had no need to. With a final pulse of energy, the Relentless vanished, leaving the orbital space around Earth eerily silent and empty. Below, humanity remained as it had been, steadfast and unbroken. The silence that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. The vast fleet of the Galactic Federation, an unstoppable force that had spanned countless systems, no longer existed. No wreckage drifted in the void, no survivors called for aid. It was as though they had never been. In the council chamber, the weight of what had just occurred settled heavily over the gathered representatives. Amina broke the silence, her voice measured but tinged with weariness. The Federation will know what has happened here. We must decide how to present this to the galaxy. Ramirez leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. They'll come for answers. They'll want to know how a backwater world dismantled their most powerful fleet without firing a shot. If we stay silent, we risk sowing more chaos. Chaos may be our strongest deterrent, Amina countered. Let them wonder. Fear can be a powerful shield. Sorensen, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Fear cuts both ways. If the Federation or its allies believe we pose a greater threat than they ever imagined, they may respond with even more aggression. Ramirez scoffed. They have no fleet left. What aggression? Desperation breeds recklessness, Sorensen replied. We cannot assume their leaders will react with reason. Fear is unpredictable. A technician interrupted, her voice breaking through the tension. We're receiving transmissions from several nearby systems. Federation outposts are reporting the loss of contact with the fleet. Some are requesting clarification. Others, she hesitated. Others are demanding an explanation. Amina exchanged a glance with Ramirez. It begins. The council's spokesperson stepped forward, her expression calm but resolute. Draft a message. Make it clear we sought no conflict but were left with no choice. State the facts without revealing the mechanism. Let the galaxy know that we will defend ourselves if provoked, but that we seek no war. Ramirez frowned but said nothing. The room settled into a tense quiet as the message was prepared, each word scrutinized for its implications. It would be the first communication from Earth following the event, and every syllable carried immense weight. Above Earth, the orbital void where the fleet had once hovered now stood as a stark reminder of what had transpired. The absence of debris only amplified the mystery. The Federation's remaining leadership, scattered across distant systems, struggled to comprehend the reports they were receiving. One moment, their most formidable force had been advancing toward Earth. The next, it was gone. Admiral Vestra's last transmission had been brief, her voice calm but strained. This isn't warfare. It's something else. Something we don't understand. Then silence. In the Federation's Central Council chambers, chaos reigned. Leaders from countless species argued, each trying to make sense of the inexplicable. Some demanded retaliation. Others advocated caution. The Cinder ambassador, who had once dismissed humanity as an insignificant anomaly, now spoke with uncharacteristic unease. They have demonstrated power beyond our comprehension, he said, his telepathic voice resonating in the minds of those present. To act rashly is to invite annihilation. His words carried weight, but they also sowed fear. If Earth could dismantle the Federation's strongest fleet without effort, what else were they capable of? The galaxy had always known war, but this was something new, something that defied the very nature of conflict. On Earth, the Council reconvened as the message was transmitted. The holographic display in the center of the room now showed incoming responses. Some were desperate pleas for information. Others were thinly veiled threats. The galaxy was watching, waiting for Earth's next move. We've shifted the balance, Amina said quietly. But balance is a fragile thing. Sorensen nodded. And one we must maintain carefully. If we overplay our hand, we risk uniting the galaxy against us. If we underplay it, we invite further aggression. Ramirez gestured toward the display. The galaxy already knows. The fleet didn't vanish on its own. They'll fear us no matter what we say. The question is whether that fear works in our favor. Fear is temporary, Sorensen replied. Respect is enduring. We must ensure they see us as equals, not monsters. The spokesperson stepped forward again, her tone unwavering. The message is sent. Now we wait. But waiting brought its own challenges. Across the galaxy, speculation ran rampant. Some believed Earth had discovered an ancient weapon, a relic of forgotten gods. Others whispered that humanity had made a pact with beings beyond comprehension. The truth, known only to a handful, was far simpler yet far more profound. Humanity's ingenuity, born of necessity, had outpaced even the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The days that followed were tense. Delegations from neighboring systems arrived, seeking dialogue. The Council met them with a calm but firm stance, reiterating Earth's position. Peace was preferred, but defense was non-negotiable. For Admiral Vestra's superiors, however, peace was not so easily accepted. A faction within the Federation began to argue for retribution, convinced that Earth's power could be countered if only they understood it. Another faction, more cautious, pushed for diplomacy. The divide threatened to fracture the Federation itself. On Earth, the weight of what had been done lingered heavily. Sorensen, in particular, struggled with the implications of Project Null. It was a weapon unlike any other, not merely destructive, but absolute. To wield it was to play with the fabric of existence itself. "Do you regret it?" Amina asked him one evening as they stood in the observation deck, watching Earth's night sky. "No," Sorensen said after a long pause. "But I fear what it means. We've crossed a threshold we can never uncross. And the galaxy will never see us the same way again. Perhaps that's for the best," Amina said quietly. "We've shown them that we're not to be underestimated. Now we must show them what we truly stand for." As the days turned into weeks, the galaxy slowly adjusted to the new reality. Earth's message was clear, its actions deliberate. The Federation, once the unchallenged authority of the stars, now faced an uncertain future. And humanity, no longer seen as an underdog, began to carve its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through resilience and resolve.